Welcome. My name's Wendy Ingracia, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Feminine Divine Group, who's presenting today. The Feminine Divine Group supports the kinship ministry by providing a welcoming, sacred space for women to form a bond with each other and the feminine divine. We are compassionate and understanding of women, their challenges and joys, and their spiritual history. We've met as a group for over 17 years. We warmly welcome new members and meet on the last Saturday of the month at 9:30. At the start of each season in September, we democratically choose a book to read and discuss. In the past, we have presented several summer lay services based on our readings. This past year, we read Soul Boom by Rainn Wilson. We decided that for this service, we would present Women of Courage, which we believe will delight you with its facts and fascinating stories.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Leslie Pete, your worship associate. We clasp the hands of those who go before us and the hands of those who came after us. We enter the little circle of each other's arms and the larger circle of lovers whose hands are joined in a dance, and the larger circle of all creatures passing in and out of life who move also in a dance to a music so subtle and vast that no one hears it except in fragments. Please rise to sing hymn number 212 in your teal hymn.
We are dancing a silver circle. We are dancing silver circle. We are dancing silver circle. Sisters, brothers, all. Here we seek and find our history. Here we seek and find our history. Here we seek and find our history. Sisters, brothers, all. We will all do our own naming. We will all do our own naming. We will all do our own naming. Sisters, brothers, all. Every round our generation, every round our generation, every round our generation, brothers, sisters, brothers, all. On and on the circles moving, on and on the circles moving, on and on the circles moving. Sisters, brothers, all.
Sorry about that. Would you please remain standing while we recite our covenant? Unite to strengthen the bonds of kinship among all persons, to promote unity Please be seated.
Hello, my name is Bev Leachman, and I'm here to read you a story. So kids, all the young, if you'd like to come on up, and the young at heart, anybody who feels like they'd like to be up front, come on up. Okay, when I read the story, I really want you to look at the pictures, because I'm going to say the words, but there's a lot in the pictures of this book, okay? The story is I Will Be Fierce, written by B. Birdsong, illustrated by Nindi Chahini. Today I will be fierce. I will answer the call to adventure. I will put on my armor. I will fill my treasure chest. I will go forth to explore new worlds. Today I will be fierce. I will take on the monsters that stand in my way. I will drive back the dragons. I will dare to walk with the giants. I will charge the many-headed serpent. Today I will be fierce. I will chart my own course. I will climb the mountain of knowledge. I will trick the guardian of wisdom into revealing her secrets. I will solve the mysteries of the unknown. Today I will be fierce. I will break away from the ordinary. I will stand up for my beliefs, and I will build new bridges. I will search for light in the darkness. Today I will be fierce. I will claim my victory, show and tell. I will conquer my fears. I will make my voice heard. I will be the hero of my story. Today I will be fierce. I will lead the way home. And then I will rest. For tomorrow I will be fierce again. The end.
And now please join me in singing our young people back to their seats. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Good morning. Morning. My name is Julie Ciccarelli, and I go by she and her. And the courageous young woman I'm going to talk about today is Alexander Ocasio-Cortez, also known as AOC. In January of 2019, she was sworn in as the youngest woman and youngest Latino to serve in Congress. She had shocked the political establishment by defeating a long-term and powerful incumbent. Her campaign was run entirely by volunteers and donations. People funded. She takes no lobbyist money even now. AOC was born in the Bronx. Her mom was an immigrant from Puerto Rico who worked as a housekeeper, and her father, a child of immigrants from Puerto Rico, worked as a landscaper and architect. They named their daughter Alexandria, which translated from the Greeks means defender of humankind. Like our heroine in the book, Alexander had to be fierce from the time she was 5. Her parents took a big financial risk calling on resources from relatives, scraping enough money to buy a home in Westchester. From that time on, the family struggled financially. Westchester County, less than 1 hour from the Bronx, is one of the richest counties in the country. The Bronx is one of the poorest. And the family had 2 homes because the father had to live in the Bronx and do the work, and the mother had this rich, expensive house in Westchester. AC from that time on, it wasn't easy, but when she went back to visit cousins in the Bronx, she understood unfairness, her school and the resources versus the underfunded schools her cousins were going to in the Bronx. AOC remembers where she came from and fights for her constituents. She has fought discrimination and fought for women's rights. She has been attacked for her principles, and in 2021, she was verbally accosted in the U.S. Capitol steps by Congressman Ted Yahoo of Florida. Here is her reply.
Representative Yoho put his finger in my face. He called me disgusting. He called me crazy. He called me out of my mind. And he called me dangerous. In front of reporters, Representative Yoho called me, and I quote, a fucking bitch. These are the words that Representative Yoho levied against a congresswoman, the congresswoman that not only represents New York's 14th congressional district, but every congresswoman and every woman in this country, because all of us have had to deal with this in some form, some way, some shape, at some point in our lives. And I want to be clear that Representative Yoho's comments were not deeply hurtful or piercing to me. I have encountered words uttered by Mr. Yoho and men uttering the same words as Mr. Yoho while I was being harassed in restaurants. I have tossed men out of bars that have used language like Mr. Yoho's. And I have encountered this type of harassment riding the subway in New York City. This is not new, and that is the problem. Mr. Yoho was not alone. He was walking shoulder to shoulder with Representative Roger Williams. And that's when we start to see that this issue is not about one incident. It is cultural. It is a culture of lack of impunity, of accepting of violence and violent language against women, and an entire structure of power that supports that. I want to thank him for showing the world that you can be a powerful man and accost women. You can have daughters and accost women without remorse. You can be married and accost women. You can take photos and project an image to the world of being a family man and accost women without remorse and with a sense of impunity.
AOC is known for her moral courage. She is a brilliant and forceful politician who fights for her beliefs, and we're lucky to have her in Congress.
Good morning. Mary Freemeyer, she, her. Have you heard of Josephine Baker? She rose from obscurity in the US to become a world-renowned entertainer equivalent to a modern-day Beyonce. In the 1920s, Josephine moved to Paris and within several years was said to be the most photographed woman in the world. She socialized with the likes of Picasso, he painted her, Hemingway, he wrote about her, saying she was the most sensational woman anybody ever saw or ever will, and Jean Cocteau, he made her a film star. But perhaps the most amazing, although little-known fact about Josephine Baker is that she was a highly decorated spy in World War II. Raised in extreme poverty and segregation in St. Louis, Josephine used her singing and dancing talents first with a traveling performing troupe, then to get to Broadway, and finally, Paris. Known for her beauty, risque performances, outgoing personality, and menagerie of pets, Josephine became the darling of high society. In Paris, she first found freedom, fame, and fortune. As a result, Josephine loved the city and its people with all her heart and soul. This love prompted her wartime efforts. During the 1920s and 30s, Josephine continued to perform in Paris, Europe, and North Africa, and expanded her fame and fortune. By the late 1930s, it was obvious what Hitler and the Nazis were planning for Europe. Josephine was recommended to the head of the 12e Bureau, becoming an honorary correspondent, a volunteer undercover agent. She volunteered to gather information using her high society contacts. Josephine was successful in learning the war intentions of Italy and Japan, as well as obtaining war plans from the Germans. During the war, she used her fame to secure visas, allowing her to travel across borders, all while carrying intelligence information written in invisible ink on her sheet music, on her arms, or on small slips of paper pinned to her underwear, certain no one would dare search La Baker. While this proved true, her life was in continuous jeopardy should she be caught. In 1941, Josephine was sent to North Africa as the region's importance in the war was becoming apparent. Again, Josephine brought her menagerie and used her conspicuousness as a cover. Using her performances as a reason to travel, she transported secrets from Morocco to Portugal and Spain that were then sent directly to Churchill and Washington, D.C. While in France and North Africa, she also used her contacts to help secure passports and visas to South America for refugees fleeing from European death camps. Josephine became seriously ill in Morocco and spent 18 months in a Casablanca hospital. Her celebrity was global, which meant that practically anyone might want to pay a visit. Josephine's room became the perfect clandestine rendezvous point for the Allies' agents and contacts, ideal for passing information and papers. Josephine Baker repeatedly, continuously risked her life to help fight the Nazis, who she declared herself willing to kill with her own hands if necessary. The information passed by Josephine during the long war years assisted the French resistance, de Gaulle's Free French, Britain's SIS, or otherwise known as MI6, and the US FBI. Much of the espionage work of World War II will never be released, so it is fortunate we know so much about Josephine Baker's efforts, even if her invaluable contributions to defeating the Nazis are not widely known. As a result of her espionage efforts, Josephine Baker received high honors from the French government. At the end of the war, she was made a member of the French military and received from Charles de Gaulle the Croix de Guerre and the French Medal of Resistance with Rosette. In 1961, she was made a Knight of the Legion of Honor France's highest decoration for civil or military service, and in 2021 awarded Pantheon honors, only the 6th woman and the first Black woman buried, ceremonially in her case, in the Parisian secular temple to the great men of the French Republic, where since 1791, only 81 individuals have been awarded such a high distinction. She later said her accolades from long years of fame and fortune were as nothing compared to her wartime work. Using her singing and dancing skills to lift herself out of abject poverty, fleeing the prejudice and racism in America by moving to Paris at age 19, becoming an international star, engaging in espionage of the highest level during World War II, and after the war, becoming a civil rights activist and advocate for the disadvantaged, as well as adopting 12 children from around the world to create her own rainbow tribe. Josephine Baker was the epitome of a woman of courage.
Good morning, I'm Barbara Griggs. About a year ago, just by chance, I happened to catch an old film on Turner Classic Movies. It was entitled Sister Kenny, 1946. A Catholic nun she was not. She was born in 1880 in New South Wales, Australia, and she was in fact a self-trained bush nurse, homeschooled by her mother and received just a few years of formal education. She had broken her wrist, and during her convalescent period, she studied anatomy and skeletal structure. There was absolutely no record of any formal training. After her wrist healed, she simply had a seamstress make up a nurse's uniform and started advertising herself as a medical and surgical nurse, and reached patients by horseback or motorcycle. In 1912, she opened a cottage hospital where she provided convalescent treatment. Now, this was pretty brazen because the Queensland Health Act of 1911 introduced stringent rules governing the registration of nurses, but she flew under the radar. Joining the war effort during World War I, she was on transport ships used to carry war goods and soldiers to the front. Now, this is where she acquired her title Sister. Sister was a title given to a head nurse in the Australian Army. And in 1919, she was honorably discharged and actually awarded a pension. And also, she seemed to be a pretty astute businesswoman. She was helping a young girl that had been injured in a farm accident, and she ripped off a cupboard door. There's your stretcher, to limit trauma to that hospital. She actually perfected the stretcher. She patented it and actually received royalties from the sales. It was 1932 that Sister Kenny really came into focus when a record number of polio cases was reported in Australia, Europe, and of course the United States, also referred to as infant paralysis. Truly, polio was a scourge of the 1930s, 40s, and early 1950s. Sister Kenny developed a routine of daily salt and sulfur baths, exercise performed in a warm bath, passive exercise, and massage. Truly the modern basis for physiotherapy. She instituted a careful regimen of exercises designed to recall function in unaffected neural pathways and re-educate affected pathways. She encouraged patients to learn names of their affected muscles and how they worked, actually encouraging the patients to take some kind of responsibility for their own recovery. She was strongly opposed to the recommended treatment of immobilizing limbs with plaster casts and braces. She felt this was the worst procedure one could perform. It seems so obvious now that immobilizing muscle is a sure way for that muscle to atrophy. When watching this movie, it reminded me of Reiki. She was manipulating energy flow. She received immediate flack from the Queensland Royal Commission. Her method is a grievous error, fraught with grave danger, especially in very young people. Why, it's criminal. In her autobiography, published in 1943, And They Shall Walk, I quote, "I was wholly unprepared for the extraordinary attitude of the medical men in readiness to condemn anything that smacked of reform or that ran contrary to approved methods of practice. In 1940, Sister Kenny came to America. Doctors in New York and Chicago showed her the door, but was given a chance to show her treatment method at Mayo Clinic in Minneapolis. She finally found an audience. Doctors took note. In 1942, the Elizabeth Kenny Clinic opened and a new approach developed: medical rehabilitation. The Kenny method became widely accepted and remains a prominent center for rehabilitation, treatment, and research. The city was her basis in America for 11 years. According to the Gallup poll in 1951, Elizabeth Kenny was the most admired woman in America, displacing Eleanor Roosevelt for the first time in 10 years. Only then were there invitations to lecture and honorary degrees conferred. The Sister Kenny Foundation was established in Minneapolis to support her and her work throughout the United States. Doctors so very slowly began to change their skepticism when they saw the effects of the Kenny method. Elizabeth Kenny was a determined and outspoken woman, which harmed her relations with the medical establishment, but she persevered. Even in 1951, after all this, she was shunned at the International Congress on Polio in Copenhagen. She was not allowed to speak. The vaccine was available in 1953. Truly a woman of courage, never swaying from her belief system and never becoming discouraged over the rejection of her methods and negative feedback from the medical establishment. No, she did not invent the polio vaccine, but she helped thousands of children shed their crutches and braces with her treatment. Now today, if someone mentions polio, of course Jonas Salk or Albert Sabine might be mentioned, but I, for one, did not know about this steadfast, brave woman from Australia. She died in 1952, but what a legacy she left.
Good morning. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Hillary Rodham Clinton, a diplomat and a politician in our time. A few of her many, many accomplishments include graduate of Yale Law School, 1973. Of course, she married Bill Clinton in 75 and became a mother 5 years later to Chelsea Clinton in 1980. She was also America's First Lady from 1993 to 2001. She was a senator from New York in 2000. She ran in the Democratic primary in 2008 against Obama. She was the Secretary of State in 2009, appointed by Obama. She had a presidential run in 2016 against Donald Trump. She won the popular vote. I like to think she won the election. She's an author of several books, and she is an honorary founding chair of the Institute for Women, Peace, and Security at Georgetown University as of 2011. And more recently, 2023, she's a professor of practice at the School of International and Public Affairs. So next, I have a series of quotes from Hillary that illustrate the inspiring, uniting, and courageous woman that she is. Always aim high, work hard, and care deeply about what you believe in. And when you stumble, keep faith, and when you're knocked down, get right back up, and never listen to anyone who says you can't or shouldn't go on. From her 2008 campaign for president. Ending her 2008 campaign for president, she said, "Every moment we waste looking back keeps us from moving forward. In this world and the world of tomorrow, we must go forward together or not at all." And a little self-reflection. You have to be true to yourself. You have to be enough in touch with who you are and what you want, how you want to live, and what's important to you. to make your decisions based on that. Sometimes it's very difficult. And at the Women in the World Summit of 2016, she said, "I have always believed that women are not victims. We are agents of change. We are drivers of progress. We are makers of peace. All we need is a fighting chance." And she said also, "I know that at a time when so much seems to be pulling us apart, it can be hard to imagine how we'll ever pull together again. I know because I've seen it in the lives of people across America, and I've seen it in my own life." And this was from her Democratic National Convention presidential nomination acceptance speech back in 2016. And finally, on a lighter note, from the Barbie movie snubs, Hillary Clinton joined the conversation by posting a message to Greta Gerwig, Unitarian, and Margot Robbie on social media. She said, "Greta and Margot, while it can sting to win the box office, but not take home the gold, your millions of fans love you," Clinton wrote. "You're both so much more than Kenough," she added, referencing a phrase that shows up on Ken's sweatshirt in the film. And perhaps the message couldn't have come from a more appropriate public figure than Clinton, a former Secretary of State who, of course, lost the presidential election in 2016 to Donald Trump, despite winning the popular vote.
Good morning. I'm Marjorie Leon, and I'm short. Can you all hear me? Okay. I've lived in a lot of small rural towns, and playing and singing music has always been a very important part of my life. And so when I went looking for a woman of courage, I was wondering if there was anybody out there doing good things that kind of shared a little bit of that background and understood it. And that's when I encountered Dolly Parton. So she had a very humble start. And if you look at the next slide, there we go, that is the actual cabin where she lived that housed 14 people. Her mother had had 12 children by the age of 35. She was number 4. So that is the actual home that they lived in. Her father, Robert Lee, never learned to read or write. And he was a very savvy businessman, so that was how he compensated. Her mother, Ava Lee, like a lot of mountain people, taught her children the Welsh ballads from her own ancestry and a lot of Smoky Mountain folklore. The day Dolly Parton graduated from high school, she was free as a songbird and moved to Nashville that very day. She was lucky enough and talented enough to be able to land a spot on Porter Wagner's country music television show, and she spent the next 9 years there. By 1974, she was ready to start her own solo career. So she wrote a song to Porter Wagner, who wasn't very happy about her leaving the show, called "I Will Always Love You." And a lot of you may know it because Whitney Houston covered that song in The Bodyguard. And we'll see how that figures into things in the end here. But she left. And I want to talk to you today about a couple of things. Why on earth does Dolly Parton's music matter? And why on earth does the philanthropy that she has been involved in matter either? So I want to start with her music. Dolly Parton's music was dealing with socially conscious themes long before this was popular or accepted on the country music scene, way before. She was talking about the double sexual standard for women, poverty, child abandonment. That is not a popular country theme. Women in the workplace, and out-of-wedlock pregnancy and suicide. We'll take a look at some of the songs that she wrote. In 1968, she was addressing the double sexual standard for women. And she wrote the song, Just Because I'm a Woman, and the lyrics say, now I know that I'm no angel, if that's what you thought you'd found. I was just the victim of a man who let me down. Yes, I've made my mistakes, but listen and understand. My mistakes are no worse than yours just because I'm a woman. By 1971, she was talking about her own poverty. But her own poverty was not something of sadness. She was very proud that they made do with what they had. And she wrote, my coat of many colors. She needed a coat to go to school, and they didn't have any money for one. So her mother took a bag of rags that somebody had given to the family and sewed together this coat out of those rags. When Dolly got to school, while the other kids were laughing at her, and in memory of that, she wrote this song, My Coat of Many Colors. And one of the verses says, my coat of many colors that my mama made for me, made only from rags, but I wore it so proudly. Although we had no money, I was as rich as I could be in my coat of many colors that my mama made for me. She takes up a tougher kind of topic when she talks about child abandonment with Me and Little Andy. Me and Little Andy is a song she sings at many of her concerts. And it's about a little girl who's about 6 or 7 years old, whose name is Sandy. And she shows up one terrible, dark, and stormy night with her little dog under her arm, whose name is Little Andy. And what Dolly says herself about this song is, the people who know me well, I sing a lot of sad songs. But this one is absolutely pathetic. And Me and Little Andy is about having nobody there to take care of this little girl. And the lyrics tell the story. Patty cake and baker's man. My mommy ran away again, and we was all alone, didn't know what to do. I wonder if you'll let us stay with you. Giddy up, Trotty horse, going to the mill. Can we stay all night? If you don't love us, no one will. I promise we won't cry. London Bridge is falling down. My daddy's drunk again in town. And we was all alone and didn't know what we could do. We wondered if you'd let us stay with you. Probably most of us are familiar with her statement about women in the workplace. 9 to 5. Okay? Many of us don't know that 9 to 5 was actually written about a real group of secretaries in Boston in 1970 who organized a group they called 9 to 5. And they petitioned their bosses for better pay, for more opportunities for advancement, and also for less sexual harassment in the workplace. And by golly, they got it. And the movie 9 to 5, with the lyrics that you see, were a result of that particular incident. One of my favorite songs of hers, but probably one of her saddest, is about out-of-wedlock pregnancy and an ultimate suicide. And that is The Bridge that she wrote in 1991. It's about a young teenage couple who meets on the bridge, falls in love, has a moment of passion, and ends up with a pregnancy that they did not expect. You know, we so often think of suicide as an urban kind of problem, but what's interesting about it is in the 20 years from 2000 to 2020, the rates of urban suicide, they increased in urban areas 27%. But in rural areas during that same time period, they increased 46%. It's a very big problem in rural areas and one that we really want to think about a little. And so I give you the last verses of the bridge. The bridge so wide, the bridge so long, where once we stood together. Tonight, I stand alone. Tonight, while standing on the bridge, my heart is beating wild. To think that you could leave me here with our unborn child, my feet are moving slowly, closer to the edge. Here is where it started, and here is where I'll end it. So let's go to a lighter note, shall we? Dolly Parton's philanthropy, why does it matter? Because she has always been about people, not politics. Believe it or not, this woman has donated to causes in education, conservation, disaster relief, poverty, literacy, medicine. And finally, in 2022, she was honored with the Carnegie Medal of Philanthropy for all those decades of good deeds that she did. Let's take a look at what she did for education. A lot of times, Dolly will act globally. In small rural towns, neighbors have to help each other. There aren't a lot of services out there. You can't always call the police, the fire, the paramedics. They're not there, so neighbors help each other. And that's what she did in her philanthropy for education. She decreased the high school dropout rates in Sevier, Tennessee, where she lives, from 35% to 6% just by giving graduating 7th and 8th graders $500 to keep going to high school. 2000, she gave 5 scholarships of $15,000 each to Sevier County, Tennessee high school seniors, help them get to college. And many of you know that she owns a theme park called Dollywood. It's out near the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And in 2022, the year she won that philanthropy award, she covered 100% of all the tuition fees and book costs, which are pretty substantial these days, for any Dollywood theme park employee who wanted to further their education. Now, we don't typically think of Dolly Parton as being a person associated with conservation. But interestingly, in 1991, she established Eagle Mountain Sanctuary in Dollywood. When an eagle gets injured out there in the wild, there's really only a couple of choices that people have if they come upon that eagle. They can either euthanize the eagle or they can help that eagle survive in a sanctuary. And Dolly's sanctuary that she built for these injured eagles is the largest sanctuary for non-releasable bald eagles in the entire United States. Something we don't think about with her. Disaster relief. If we've got a disaster, Dolly is there. 2016, we had terrible wildfires in the Great Smoky Mountain regions where she lived. She gave $12 million for victim relief that year. Flooding. Western Tennessee was flooded in 2021 out in Humphreys County. She gave $700,000 to aid those flood victims and then raised another portion of her ticket sales to help further. Poverty. She knows poverty because she grew up in poverty. But Whitney Houston, Whitney died 9 years before Dolly went to an African-American community in Nashville and said, these are Whitney's people, and so they're my people too. She donated a portion of the royalties from the song that they both sang, I Will Always Love You, to that community. Then she bought an entire strip mall in that community to be able to give people somewhere to shop and an economy to be able to sustain the community. It's not just about giving money, it's about being sustaining. Literacy. I think we probably know Dolly Parton best for literacy. Her father was not able to read, and she always felt that that was something she wanted to do differently out there in the world. So in 1995, she established Dolly's Imagination Library. This was a national and international program. Gifts children under the age of 5 with 1 book per month, nationwide and internationally to boost literacy. And in 2018, that program of hers, Imagination Library, donated its 100 millionth book. Here's one, also like conservation, I bet we don't know much about, and that's medicine. In 2007, she raised $100 million to establish a hospital and care center locally in Sevier County, Tennessee. They could never have done that without her assistance. 2017, she was working with Vanderbilt University, and she was donating $1 million to that medical center hospital as well. 2020, we were all absolutely unsure of which direction to turn with COVID. But what Dolly did was she gave $1 million to the medical researchers who are developing that Moderna vaccine for COVID, which is 94.5, almost 95% effective against the disease, and by golly, they had breakthrough, and she was there helping. And so, I salute you, Dolly Parton, Tennessee Songbird, woman of courage with a heart of gold.
Giving thanks is an important part of living in a covenantal, self-supporting community. Your financial gifts show gratitude for how our congregation supports us all. We are wildly grateful for you and this support. Without you, our mission to spread this faith of love could not evolve. Your gifts of gratitude and love will now be gratefully received.
If here you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If you have found comfort, go and share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another that they may come true. If you have known love, give some back to a bruised and hurting world. Go in peace.